Under the covers. I've been wanting to do this for a long time. I keep looking over my shoulder like someone's going to come and snatch this paper away. But I've been carrying this around for so long, and it's eating me up inside. The life I lead now is so ordinary and commonplace. Nobody around me has any hint that I was once dangerous. Someone of importance. I used to be a spy, can you believe that? A honeypot artist, working for the Office of Naval Intelligence. My name isn't Peggy, but that's the name I'll use here. I had a handler named Pasha, a drop box that would give me my cash and new assignments. I was good at my job, maybe too good. I'd pose as an executive of a metals trading company. It was the perfect cover. It gave me access to important government officials all over the world. Most of the time, I didn't have to do anything too extreme. Just create a scene, start an emotional affair, and get some compromising photos. But sometimes the job required me to get my hands dirty and maybe some other things dirty. My first code name was Rhino. I was sent to meet this politician in Paris. He was a charming man, with a smile that could light up a room. I remember the first time we met at a fancy gala. I was wearing a long, silk gown that clung to my curves like a second skin. I'm a blonde and the French love big-breasted pure blondes. The deep crimson color of the dress was so vivid, it seemed to glow under the chandelier lights. The bodice was adorned with delicate lace that framed my buttocks and the long skirt flowed behind me as I walked, creating a soft swishing sound with each step. He came over, introduced himself, and his eyes lingered on my breasts a little too long. That's when I knew I had him. Over the next few weeks, we would meet for coffee, then dinner. The sexual tension was building, but I was in control. Or so I thought. One night, we were at his apartment, and he pulled me close. His hands, warm and slightly rough, were on my back, his fingers deftly finding the zipper of my dress. I could feel the slow, deliberate movement as he inched it down, the cool air hitting my skin as more and more of my back was exposed. His hands then moved to my waist, pulling me even closer so that I could feel the hardness of his body against mine. I gasped, and he took that as an invitation to kiss me. His lips smashed onto mine, his tongue demanding entrance. I was supposed to just let him get close enough for a photo, but there was something about the way his hands were now exploring my bare back, running up and down, that made me forget for a moment why I was there. His hands moved to my shoulders, pushing the straps of my dress down, and the silk fabric started to slide over my breasts. He cupped one of them and kneaded it with soft caresses, making my nipples perk up. It was an exquisite sensation. I could feel a hardness rising from him and touching my belly. But then I remembered the hidden camera with a timer in my purse, and with great effort, I managed to pull away just in time, leaving him frustrated and me confused. He looked at me with a mixture of desire and anger, and I quickly made my excuses and left. As I walked out of his apartment, my heart was still pounding, and I felt a strange mixture of relief and disappointment, my dress still hanging precariously off my shoulders. Then there was Kappa. I was in Berlin, targeting a military contractor. This time, the meetings were more secretive. We would meet in old, abandoned warehouses. He was a rough-looking man, with a scar on his cheek that made him look dangerous. He was also very forward. The first time we met, he grabbed my wrist with a vice-like grip and pulled me towards him. I could feel his hardness pressing against my hip, and I gasped. He smirked, like he knew exactly what he was doing to me. I slapped him and he smiled at me, enjoying the terrified look on my face. We had several encounters like that. Each time, the tension was almost unbearable. One day, we were in a small, dimly lit room. He started taking off my blouse, his large, calloused hands fumbling with the buttons. He ripped it open, the buttons flying off in all directions. His hands then moved to my bra, roughly unhooking it and pulling it off. I was left standing there in just my skirt and stockings, and his eyes raked over my body. He pushed me against the wall, his lips on my neck, sucking while his hands were squeezing my breast hard. I let out a moan, and he covered my mouth with his hand. "Quiet," he growled, and I felt a thrill run through me at his dominance. His hands then moved to my skirt, bunching up the fabric and pulling it up over my hips. I could feel his fingers brushing against the inside of my thighs, and I was both terrified and excited. He then reached into my cotton panties and let his fingers explore and rub my wetness, and oh my was I wet. I actually hated the man, but for some reason, a reason I only understand now, I could not understand why it made me so excited. I hated my body for betraying my mind. But just as things were getting really heated, we heard voices outside. He quickly covered me up, throwing my blouse back over me in a hurry. I left that place shaken, but also a little disappointed that it had ended so abruptly. A few days later, we met again in a different abandoned building. This time, he was even more aggressive. He ripped my skirt off completely, leaving me in just my stockings and panties. He pushed me face down onto some wooden crates and his hands were everywhere. His fingers pulled down my white lace panties and he immediately penetrated me with his thumb. I shrieked and he took his hand behind my neck and pushed my head down. He aggressively violated me with his finger until he felt I was sufficiently wet, which was very quickly. I don't know why such animals made me wetter than I could ever get myself with my own fingers. But my body was betraying me again, giving him the signal he needed to take what he wanted. Another agent was above us in the rafters with a camera and a clear shot of all my secret parts, and I later thought he enjoyed showing the pictures around his office buddies. Another thought that strangely turned me on. As he spread my legs apart, and I could feel his hot breath on the back of my neck, and he forcefully entered me, taking me, demanding my submission, and I gave it willingly. He was rough and demanding and I was arching my back with pain and pleasure. The tidbit not in my operation reports were the explosive orgasms that I had during this encounter. Aspen was my third code name. I was in Rome, trying to get close to a wealthy industrialist. He was a suave man, with a penchant for fine wine and beautiful women. I entrapped him at a private wine tasting. He poured me a glass of the most expensive red wine I'd ever tasted. As I sipped it, he watched me intently, his eyes never leaving my lips. I was wearing a form-fitting black dress that had a deep V neckline, showing more than a hint of cleavage. The fabric was a soft satin that felt smooth against my skin, and the short hemline ended just above my knees, revealing my shapely legs. I was wearing the most sheer panties and I made sure to cross my legs often enough for him to have a private viewing. Our later encounters were filled with long, lingering looks and soft touches. One night, at his villa, he led me out to the balcony. The moonlight was shining down on us, and he took my hand. His fingers gently caressed mine as he started kissing them, then slowly made his way up my arm. I could feel my heart racing. He turned me around and started untying the ribbon that held the back of my dress together. His hands were so gentle, yet there was an underlying urgency. He slid the dress off my shoulders, and it fell to the floor in a pool of satin. I was standing there in just my lacy black bra and matching panties, and he looked at me like I was the most precious thing he'd ever seen. He picked me up and carried me inside to his bedroom. He laid me down on the soft, silk sheets, and his hands started exploring my body. His fingers traced the outline of my bra, then he unhooked it with one hand. He took his time, looking at me, before his open mouth descended on my breasts. His hands were kneading my buttocks, gently at first, then with more force. I arched my back as his hands found their way to my panties, his fingers slipping under the waistband. He slowly pulled them down, his eyes never leaving mine. He was all over me, and I gave in completely. We made love for hours, the heat between us building and building until I thought I would explode. It was a moment of pure passion, but also one that I knew I would regret. I was supposed to be in control, but I had given in to my desires. Sometimes my work was like that, on the edge and then overboard. I justified it telling myself I was doing this for my country, but my mind knew better. It was satisfying a deep need, a need so deep inside my subconscious that I couldn't even give it a concept. I just called it my doll. I would retreat to the helplessness of a pretty doll for someone to play with, and that's the best way I could describe it. But my last mission, as Orion, was the most intense of all. I was sent to Turkey to seduce a rich Saudi prince. He was working for the Russians, buying titanium for their submarines. He owned a club in Istanbul, and I managed to get an invitation. When I walked into that club, it was like stepping into another world. The music was loud, the lights were dim, and there were beautiful women everywhere. I was wearing a gold dress that shimmered with every step. The dress was backless, and the fabric hugged my curves tightly. The neckline was low, showing off a lot of my chest, and the long, flowing skirt had a high slit that exposed my leg with each movement. I saw him across the room. He was sitting on a throne-like chair, surrounded by his entourage. His eyes met mine, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. He motioned for me to come over, and I walked towards him, my heart pounding in my chest. He took my hand and pulled me onto his lap. His hands were all over me, his fingers tracing the outline of my breasts through the thin fabric of my dress. I could feel the heat from his hands, and I gasped. He didn't even know me, and he was already using me like he owned me. He whispered in my ear, his hot breath sending chills through me, "You're going to be mine." His hands then moved to the slit in my skirt, slowly pushing the fabric up my thigh. I tried to stop him, but his grip was too strong. My heart was beating so fast. My previous ops never moved this fast before. I pushed him with my arms, but his hands still found the soft place between my legs. He pressed hard with his fingers, pressing on my slit, and I could feel myself gush with wetness. He took his hand up and over the lace of my panties, and how he was rubbing directly on my wet center. He smiled and looked into my eyes, the eyes that were full of fear. He was enjoying this. I told him to stop, anger showing through my teeth, and he pulled his hand away and said, "Excuse me, madam, I didn't know you were American." He released his grip and I stood up, adjusting my dress. He pulled out a card and handed it to me. "I assume you're here for business and pleasure," and he winked at me. I grabbed the card and stormed out of the club. Over the next few days, he showed me his world. His palace was filled with luxury beyond my wildest dreams. He had a harem of beautiful women. They lived in a separate house and wore sheer Arab outfits with superb figures, some curvy, some skinny, but all beautiful. I was almost jealous. But while I was there with him, he seemed to have his eyes set on me. He would send me notes, written in a fancy script, inviting me to meet him in secret places in the city. Each note was like a clue in a scavenger hunt, leading me deeper and deeper into his web. One note led me to a hidden garden in a mosque. It was filled with the most beautiful flowers, and the smell was intoxicating. He was waiting for me there, but oddly nobody else could be seen. He took my hand and led me to a secluded corner and said he had cleared the entire building just for me. He started to kiss me, his hands were under my silk white dress, slowly moving up my thighs, brushing against my garter belt. His fingers were playing with the edge of my white lace panties, and I tried to resist, but his touch was too much. He pushed me up against a wall, and his lips were on my neck, sucking hard. I could feel his hardness pressing against me, and I knew I was in trouble. He then stood me up and led me down a rose-covered hallway to a thick wooden door. It was inscribed with Arabic script written in gold. Inside was a red velvet study, with couches and books everywhere. There was a gold-plated velvet chair, almost a throne, and he sat down. He commanded me to come closer, and for some reason my feet obeyed, even though my mind was terrified of what he would do here. My cameraman was in the courtyard, but here in this study, there was no shot. He read my mind and said, "Don't worry, we are alone. No one can see what I'm going to do to you." My heart dropped. He then told me to slip off the strings holding up my white dress. My hands were shaking now, and I pulled them over on my shoulders one by one. The top of the dress dropped down and exposed my bare breasts with my erect nipples in clear sight. The dress was tight against my waist, and he told me to push it down slowly, so I did. I moved so slowly and I could already feel the wetness soaking my white lace panties. The dress hit the ground with no sound. He smiled and told me to come to him. He was sitting and I walked so that I was between his legs standing. He put his mouth over my breast and I squealed out louder than I thought I would. He let go and then turned me around and pulled both my hands behind my back. He had a gold silk scarf and proceeded to tie my hands behind my back. The thought of what he would do to me made me even more wet than before, and I couldn't stand the anticipation. He stood up and led me over the desk and bent me over it. I whimpered something, but don't remember what I said. He sternly told me to shut and listen. I nodded. He told me that at any time that he could kill me and slice me up and send pieces to every government that was looking for me. That the only way to get out of the country alive was to be his slave and submit to him. My mind was in terror. I was made. How did he know? Regardless, I started to cry, knowing I might die. Please don't hurt me, I will tell you what you want. I pleaded. Tell me? He questioned. What could you possibly tell me that I don't already know? You must offer me more than that. He had a deep chuckle after this. I could feel his hardness press up against my buttocks. It was huge and hard. Much bigger than I had felt before. I pleaded further, please don't hurt me, I will serve you. To this he further chuckled. You will take what I give you and you will be mine. I nodded again. That's when I could hear him untie his belt, and he slowly unbuttoned his thwab and pulled out his thing. He started to rub it against my wet slit. I was so scared, but at the same time, my body was betraying me again. My slit felt electricity each time he wiped up and down. Then he put the pressure on. Trying to enter me. He was so thick that it didn't go in. I screamed with pain, but he kept going. Pushing harder, grabbing my shoulders and pulling me in. I gushed even more liquid and felt it slip in with a thud. I opened my eyes wide and let out a silent scream. That's when he started to own me, to take from me all that was mine. His rhythm was deep and penetrating, and I felt the ache and pressure start to build. He started to move faster and I couldn't believe the size that was inside me. I felt like my legs were being sawed apart. His hands were on my hips tight now, guiding me. Then he leaned down and bit my shoulder, and with the stabbing pain, I climaxed harder than I had ever done before. I felt my head swelling up and ringing in my ears. I screamed out on pleasure and ecstasy. He kept going, faster now, more aggressive and angry. He didn't stop for me or for anything. He called me dirty names and he called me his sow, his breeding stock, his cheap flesh. The dirty names made me climax again, this time harder than before. He then blew up inside me, sending shockwaves of liquid into me, hitting my walls with bullets of pleasure. I could feel how much he deposited in me because it was running down my legs. He stood there inside me for almost a minute. Our breathing synced and our sweat mingled as he lay his head down on my back and arms. From then on he knew he owned me. I disappeared for over 2 years. I was part of his harem, but for that brief time I was his first girl. He took me everywhere and took all of me in those places. He had me please him orally in the club in front of strangers. He passed me around to his friends and demanded that I please them. I was part of orgies so strange that I don't have the words to describe them. He introduced me to the tools of pain that I still have scars for. Public humiliation and exhibitionism. I did everything he told me to because my mind finally caught up with my body. I was totally and completely in love with him. He possessed me and dominated me so completely that I no longer wanted to think. I gave up all my own thoughts and allowed him to control me completely. I thought I would be with him forever, until he was assassinated by my own government and I was repatriated back stateside. I told them I was his slave, but that was a lie. I was his and I gave myself willingly. That's when I quit the ONI. I had learned things about myself, about my dark self, that I never wanted to know. I had given in to my forbidden desires, and I would have to live with that for the rest of my life. There's this constant feeling of regret, but also this strange sense of longing for that excitement, that passion. I know I can never go back, but I also can't seem to move forward. I'm stuck, haunted by the secrets of my past, and I don't know how to free myself. Every time I close my eyes, I can still feel his hands on me, his lips on my skin. It's like a curse that I can't break, and I'm left here, alone with my thoughts and my memories, wondering if I'll ever be able to escape the shadow of who I used to be.